Okay, I am Jice Johnson. That is me. I am Jice Johnson. I'm the founder and I am the CBO of the Black Business Initiative. And before I get into this talk, I want to just talk a little bit about how I came up with this idea, this conversation around I am. So I mentioned I'm a single mom. I have a 16-year-old daughter. And I came home a couple of months back, and I'd gone on a little trip. My mom was helping me out. She was watching my kids. And my daughter had been really, really rude to my mom. My mom didn't tell me this because she wanted me to be able to focus. So when I got home, she was really upset. So she's telling me what my daughter is doing. She's being disrespectful. She's, teenage shit, right? And I get into my daughter. I'm like verbally wailing on her. How dare you talk to my mom this way? You can't do this to my mom. You can't do this to your grandmother. What's wrong with you? And I end up leaving her alone. I said, okay, you head up to your room for a little bit, think about what you've done. And then I leave. And I am just walking into a restaurant to sit down with a friend. We're getting ready to go over a presentation. And I get a call from my daughter's father. Now, I really don't like this man, so I rarely answer his calls. But something told me I probably should pick up this time. And he's telling me, you need to get home immediately. He said, your daughter has your gun. I'm like, what? So, of course, my friend, she drove me there. She understood the assignment. We ran 3 red lights. We were hightailing it home. And I get there, and my daughter's on the phone with her father. She is bawling. And she does have the gun. It is sitting off to the side. It is off safety. And I am so concerned. So I pick it up, I put it away, and then I start to have this conversation with her. And I'm like, tell me what's happening right now. What's going on? And she's just, I'm so weak. I'm weak. I'm a failure. And I want to understand, these are not words that I say to her. These are not things that I impart in her. And I want to understand, how did we get here? How do you, at 16, think that you're a failure? You haven't even started life. What are you talking about? And in that moment, I didn't have much to offer her. It's like my mind is reeling. I have 2 other children in the house. My mom is in the house. Accidents happen all the time. And I'm thinking, what in the world, right? So I literally start telling her, you need to say something different. Who are you? She's like, I don't know who I am. And so then I tell her, your name. My daughter's name is Azaria. I said, Azaria means one who hears from the Lord. You hear from God. And this isn't a religious talk, but this is what her name means. One who hears from God. I said, what does your middle name mean? Her middle name is Sion. It's actually Ethiopian for Mount Zion, tall and strong. I said, you are tall, you are strong. Stand up. Say who you are. You are not weak. You are not a failure. This is not who you are. And so since that time, her and I have been into this conversation about who we are. And it really brought me back into me understanding and learning who I am. So I love the fact that Alex didn't lay out a bio, right? Because what is a bio really? It's a list of things, accomplishments, right? It tells a little bit about your life story and your journey, but does it really tell you who you are? And the one thing as my daughter and I have been going on this journey is to really understand how many people have made it into adulthood who actually don't know who they are, who are still holding on to what they believe they should be, how they believe that they should show up in the world, what it is that someone has told them. And they struggle to think about who they are for themselves to release a lot of what the world has told you that you should be. So if I gave you a quick bio, for example, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm an activist, an entrepreneur, an investor, a reader, a hiker, a traveler. But let's really break that down. Mother, daughter, sister. Those aren't really choices, right? I guess maybe motherhood, kind of, sort of, right? But those aren't really choices. I don't want you to raise your hands as I ask a couple of questions because this journey of I am is really it's personal, it's to you. But I am gonna ask some questions to just give you some things to think about. How many of you have a mother? You don't have to raise your hand, but just think about that. So if you are here, you have a mother somewhere, right? So there are parts of you that are determined that you don't necessarily get to pick. If you have a mother, that means that you are a son or a daughter to someone, right? If you have siblings, you are a sister or a brother. So that doesn't really tell you much about who I am. It doesn't tell you my birth order. It doesn't tell you where I grew up. It doesn't tell you any of my real life experiences, because I might have a mother. I clearly was born, but that doesn't mean that I have a mother, right? It doesn't mean that I have someone who has mothered me or who has loved me or who has parented me. So these things are very arbitrary. An activist, an entrepreneur, an investor, those are things that I do to make money. This is how I earn my living. This is how I feed my family. A reader, a hiker, a traveler. These are things that I do that I enjoy. So this doesn't really tell you much about who I am. One of the things that I've learned in this experience is how we perceive the world and our place in the world comes from predominantly these three things: our experience, our education, and logic. And I want to kind of break these things down. I talked a little bit about experience, but I'll give you a personal example. I grew up in East Oakland, California. Where I grew up, I started off in a 2-bedroom home and a family of 5. So me, my brother, and my sister, we all stayed in one room. My parents had a room. We had one bathroom. I didn't really know much about anything. I didn't live in an apartment. I actually never lived in an apartment until I was an adult. So I didn't have any idea about whether I was rich or whether I was poor. I grew up feeling relatively safe. I had no idea that Oakland was one of the most dangerous cities in the country. I didn't grow up thinking that where I lived was dangerous. Then I had an opportunity to move when I was 8 years old. And when we moved into a 4-bedroom house. So I got my own room. My room was bigger than the room that I had when the 3 of us shared it. So I thought I was living the good life now. So now I'm really in there. And around that time, I also had the opportunity to go to a private school called the Head Royce School, which is in Oakland, California. It is a private K-12 college preparatory school. And quite frankly, a lot of rich white folks go there. So when I went to Head Royce, I was the outsider. I was poor. Not only was I poor, but I was one of the only people who actually lived in Oakland. Most of them lived on the outskirts, Piedmont, Berkeley, a couple other places that are on the outside of the actual city of Oakland. So I get home and I'm rich. We have the biggest house on the block. I go to school and I'm poor. How do I perceive myself? I didn't even have a word for middle class until I was an adult, right? So there are experiences that we grow up in that create how we perceive ourselves, and then also how we perceive the world, rather, and how we perceive ourselves in the world. Then there's education. So for an example, I went to the military. I went into the military after 9/11. I went in 2002, and I went because I experienced 9/11, right? So I think, as this teenager, that we have been attacked by terrorists, there are weapons of mass destruction, and it is my civic duty to go in and fight for my country. Now, this is not about how you perceive America. I'm just giving you my experience in education. I had no idea about how America actually showed up in the country, in the world, rather. So now I head over to Iraq, and I'm in country, and I was completely taken aback by how American soldiers treated the average person on the ground in Iraq. Called them all types of names, pushed them around. It was very ugly. And I'm saying, but we're supposed to be here to help. I'm so confused right now. Talking to people out of country, not just people in Iraq, but that war, of course, had people from all over the world, right, coming in. I'm talking to people, and I was completely confused as to how the rest of the world sees Americans. If you have never traveled globally, you might be surprised to find out that they really don't like Americans. A lot of folks don't. They think we're entitled. They think we're miseducated, right? We expect everyone should be speaking English despite the fact that we're in another country. I mean, it's amazing to understand how we're perceived as Americans in other places. My education didn't allow me to have that experience or didn't allow me to have that information. So now what do I do with this new piece of information that I have as I'm experiencing it? Then we have logic. Logic is often faulty. There's usually not necessarily a clear right or wrong answer. And what happens inside of logic is we come up with these ideas that are not necessarily logical to everyone else, but might be logical to us. So why do we go as a family to go and look at Christmas tree lights every Christmas Eve is because that's a family tradition. If you don't have that family tradition, me saying, what do you mean you're just hanging out on Christmas Eve. You're not going to go Christmas tree watching? No. That only makes sense to me and my family. That's a tradition. That's an example of faulty logic when you believe that something that you do is normal or it's average or this is what everyone does. We can do that because we tend to put ourselves around people who look and think like us. And so then when we come out of our circles and we go somewhere else, or we experience a new tradition, or we experience a new way of thinking, a new language, a new food, we get a little bit, it discombobulates us a little bit because we are only around people who tend to think and look like us. So these things help to shape the way that we see the world and also the way that we see ourselves in the world. And what they do is they begin to create limiting beliefs. That's a long list of limiting beliefs, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But we can pick out a couple of them. You can believe that you're not unique. And so therefore, you don't bring anything special to the table. That's something that I struggled with for a long time. I would sit at the table and think, I don't actually add any value here. There's nothing that I bring. My perspective doesn't bring anything here. You can lack clear vision. You don't quite know what you want. When I went into the military, this was very different than what my family expected. My mom was incredibly disappointed because my family was going to college and I was going to the military. So I struggled with this because my sister is a teacher, a decorated teacher. My brother's an EMT and a firefighter, and I'm an entrepreneur. And I've been an entrepreneur for over 10 years, and my family still doesn't know what that means. And they keep asking me, but when are you going to go get a job? You have a master's degree. And I keep telling them, I pay other people's salaries. I don't understand what we're saying here. That doesn't make sense to them because that's part of their limiting belief. They don't understand what it means for me to go out and actually pay someone and not come in expecting a paycheck. They didn't grow up that way. So you can determine, or you can begin to find that you have limiting beliefs, and these limiting beliefs are going to be tied to an experience that you've had, education that you've received, or logic that you've concluded based off those two things. So how do we begin to break these limiting beliefs? How do we begin to think about who you are, right? Do you desire to see something different in yourself? So again, you don't have to answer this here in public, but internally, when it's you, when it's your alone time, when you are in the shower, when you're going to bed, when you're looking yourself in the mirror, are you pleased with who you see? Are you genuinely happy and you love who is looking back at you? Who is thinking inside of your head, right? Who is laying down next to you, not your husband or your wife, but you. Are you happy with that person, or do you desire to see something different inside of yourself? So the good thing is that you have a choice. And I'm sure today you've heard already, because I heard it when I was here, and I'm sure you'll hear over and over again, is that you have the ability to change the way that you perceive yourself. Your brain has the ability to adapt. We are highly adaptable. And that's good because your brain is going to focus on what you tell it to focus on, even when you're trying not to focus on something. Our brains actually don't really hear or see in the negative. For example, if I tell you, don't think about a zebra, you probably immediately thought about a zebra. You weren't thinking about a zebra before. I said it, and I actually told you not to think about that thing, and there you go. So when you are looking at the obstacles in your life, your brain is seeing them even when you tell yourself, don't look at this obstacle. Your brain can't hear that in the negative. So you have to begin to say affirmative things instead of negative things. This is where affirmations come into play. And I know quite a few adults who don't really believe in affirmations, even though we hear it because it's a regular topic of conversation at this point if you're in the mindset space. Why an affirmation? Because your brain thinks affirmatively. It doesn't think in the negative. As soon as I tell myself, don't look at the obstacle, I'm looking at the obstacle. So you have to tell yourself, look at the pathway. Look for what you're looking to see, not for what you're not looking to see. And this is the first step, the place that you begin to think about who you are. So this is what I started to think for myself. And I'll tell you how I got here, my very first time thinking about myself in a way that actually made sense to me. Not to tell you all the things that I've done or where I sit in life, but to think about who I am internally. My middle name is Michiko. I'm part Japanese, and my mother named all of us with Japanese middle names. Michiko in Japanese, means beautiful and wise child. And the very first time that I started to think about who I was truly, it was because I was in a place that I hated. I hated for myself, and I was looking at my life like, this is not what I thought. When I left high school, I went into the military. I stayed at that. I thought I was going to do 20 years in the military, come out and travel the world, retire, have all this stuff going on for myself. I saw this great, wonderful life. What actually happened is I did 4 years in the military. I ended up leaving the military early with a baby on the way with an ex-husband who had gotten someone else pregnant. It was really detrimental. I moved home. I'm now in my parents' bedroom, in my parents' house, in my bedroom, in my parents' house, with a baby on the way, leaving the career that I thought I was gonna do for 20 years, and I'm experiencing extreme depression. And I hate who I am. I'm like, what is going on in my life? I have been working since I was 14 years old. Never at one point from leaving my parents' house did I think that a few years later I'd be back in their house, under their rules, with all the stuff that my mom hates for me to be doing. Cussing, drinking. Well, I wasn't drinking when I was pregnant, but all the things that my mom does not want me to be doing as a wonderful Christian woman, I was doing all the opposite. My mom was mad that I was pregnant. My mom was mad that I was getting a divorce, despite the fact that my ex-husband clearly cheated on me and got someone else pregnant while I was away in Iraq. She was mad at me for the divorce. So this created a lot of tension in the space that I was living. I was hating who I was. And the first place that I went back to, and this is probably why I thought to tell my daughter about her name, because I remembered that my name meant beautiful and wise child, and I said, you don't feel very beautiful and you're not making wise decisions. What's next? So I had to spend time thinking about what beauty looked like for myself. I'm showing up every day, I'm crying all night, I got snot nose coming up in the morning, and how do I fix myself on the outside to think about me being beautiful and feeling good and confident when I walk into a space outside and also inside? Because at that time, I was very vengeful. I couldn't stand my ex-husband. He was every name in the book. How do I change how I feel on the inside so that someone else's decisions don't impact the beauty that I wanted to feel for myself internally? I started thinking about how I become wise. How do I think not only about what I believe, but how do I look at oppositional opinions, right? Only a fool is going to surround themselves with people who think the same thing that they think and always confirm what they believe. You have to think about the other side of that in order for you to get a well-rounded viewpoint so that you can become wise. I started thinking about what principles drive me. I started thinking about what my purpose was. I started being very intentional. I didn't just want to make any decision. I didn't want to get here and say, how did I get here? I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I just kind of sort of, I started being incredibly intentional about all the moves that I was making. I started thinking about how I produce excellence in every space that I enter. And that got me very focused. So I became a person who was very focused on my next level of success. That also gave me a lot of confidence. And that also created a very successful person by my own standards. I have a long way to go by the world standards. By my standards, huge success. So I started thinking about who I am internally as attributes that I would hope that someone else could see in me and not just the things that I do. So how do you make this shift from what you do to who you are? The first thing is to sit with yourself. I really thought that during the pandemic, people would actually have time to sit with themselves, but people were like going batshit crazy. Like, you mean I can't attend all the clubs and go to the meetings and go to the happy hours and hang out and go to the conferences and do all these things? I have to just sit here? Netflix went right through the roof. We struggle just to sit and be quiet with ourselves. And I'll tell you the number one reason why this is because how many of you have experienced something that has hurt you in your life in any capacity? Don't raise your hand, just think about that. When you have to sit with yourself, it gives you the time to think about the experiences that you have actually tried to push down and push away, that you have tried to forget about, that you have tried to move past without actually taking the time to heal. So when you have to sit with yourself, it gives you an opportunity to think about how you're showing up, why you feel the way that you feel about yourself. Why do you see yourself in this fashion? Who told you this thing that you've been sitting with that you have tried to gloss over or that you have playing at the back of your mind, but every day when you get up and go to work, you try to put on that mask? So you have to take time to really sit with yourself. The second thing is to determine your value system. This is really important because we often spend time with people who actually don't align with our values for a number of different reasons. We spend time with them because we are in the same space as them, the physical space as them, because we know nothing else, because we've grown up with them, because we work with them, because we go to church with them, because they're in the club. Wherever it is that you're spending time with people, think about the people that are actually around you and think about if they align with your value system. If you have not determined your value system, you're going to find that difficult to do. You're not going to know exactly why what so-and-so said didn't really sit well with you, but you just kind of let it go to the side, right? You're not going to really know why that group of people that are doing this thing to that person over there, and you're just kind of sitting here taking it, why that doesn't sit well with you, but you're not really doing anything about it. And part of that is because we have values that we live by, but we haven't actually defined them for ourselves. So if you ask me my value system, I could be very clear about the things that I value. My number one value is integrity. If you come around me and I catch you doing all type of lying, or you're telling this person that and this person, I'm just gonna distance myself from you. I don't like that shit, I'm not dealing with it. I'm a person of integrity, right? So that is my highest value. I hold to that standard. And it makes it very easy for me to keep my circle very close. If you don't rock with integrity, if I don't see you as a person that embodies integrity, I just don't deal with you. I don't do business with you. I don't hang around with you. You're not invited to my house. I like to invite folks over. I like to do a lot of, you cannot come because I don't want your type of energy around me. But if you don't spend time thinking about your value system, you will never get there, and you will really struggle to find your place inside of your social circle. And the last thing is to reprogram. And I'm going to break reprogramming down. One is to develop empowering beliefs. So we talked about those limiting beliefs. As you think about the things that limit you from taking it to your next level, you have a business idea, you have a company you want to launch, you have a thing you want to do, a hobby you want to try. What y'all don't know is I actually have a broken elbow right now because I wanted to try snowboarding. And right before the season ended, I broke my elbow trying snowboarding. But it took me a long time to get up there because I had this limiting belief that I can't go snowboarding. And I actually said, Black folks don't snowboard. What am I doing? Until I had a whole group of Black folks who said, hey, we're going up to the mountains. Do you want to come? We're going snowboarding. I'm like, yes. And I'm the only one who left with an injury. But nevertheless, you have to take those limiting beliefs and change them into empowering beliefs. And you do that through affirmations. Also, gratitude. Someone mentioned gratitude. Maybe that was just at my table. Someone mentioned gratitude. You have to spend time being grateful for where you are, because at the end of the day, no matter whether you had a positive or a negative experience, all of those experiences have brought you to where you are today. And you have to be grateful for them, even the ones that are hurtful. And again, when you spend time sitting with yourself, you'll take that into consideration. This experience hurt me, but I'm grateful for it because it gave me this, whatever this is for you, right? So you're gonna have to think critically about how who you are has developed out of those experiences, good or bad. 3, you wanna mind your environment. So again, you wanna think about who's actually around you. Those who are actually around you are going to help reinforce or your limiting beliefs or your empowering beliefs. At any point, if ever, I think I'm not the shit, I can tell you right now that my circle will be like, girl, you are the shit. You are tripping. They will not let me go backwards at all. They will not let me hold any limiting belief about myself. You have that business idea and someone tells you, yeah, you probably shouldn't look into that. You know, how are you going to do that with your family and your job? And, you know, the market is going crazy right now. Those people, kick them out your circle. They do not need to be around. You don't have to love them less. You just have to love them from a distance, because they are not the ones who are going to help empower you move to your next level. Then you have to visualize. I want to make sure I'm not getting gonged off the stage. I have 2 more. You have to visualize. If you are not good with visualization, then my first step with that would be to create a vision board. A vision board is not really just this, fun little magical arts and crafts project. It actually helps you take pictures and images that you want to see for your life, so that when you are struggling in this space, you can actually begin to visualize what this looks like for you. My vision boards now are words only because I'm an expert visualizer. I can sit down, I can tell you exactly what this looks like for me to make this type of money, visit these types of places, build this type of business, make this next investment. I see that in my mind's eye. If you haven't developed a mind's eye, use actual images, and you will develop a mind's eye over time. And then the last piece of this is an ongoing journey. So you have to be in a space of constant reinforcement. You will never arrive to who you actually are, because all of your experiences, all of your education, and all of your logic will continue to evolve, and it will continue to change who you are and who you see yourself becoming, and how you see the world and how you see yourself in the world. So make sure that you address the idea of the journey or the path of you becoming as an ongoing journey for yourself.